But there are still so many assaults upon our persons and our integrity. I think about what happened down in Jasper, Texas. I mean, for someone to do something so horrible, you know. So it's real hard to heal when you got those sorts of things going on. You know, it's almost like someone oppressing you, and every time they see you, they beat you. Okay, now, it would be impossible for us to reconcile even though you come to me one time and you don't beat me. The next time I see you, you beat me again. And the following time you say, well, let's reconcile. I'm sorry, it doesn't work like that. You know, you have to quit bothering me. Then we can reconcile, and then we can actually heal each other and heal ourselves. But you know, it takes a lot more than the rhetoric. I'm the executive director and founder of Topmost Family and Community Services. Originally, I'm from Chicago. I grew up in the public housing project on the South Side. And I moved here in 1977. I founded Topmost Family and Community Services out of recognized needs for there to be culturally relevant programs for our youth and families in Colorado Springs. There are numerous agencies that serve a lot of different ethnic groups in the city. However, when I first came to the city, I did not find any community service program that actually worked with African Americans or people of color in any relevant way. In 1993, we were funded with our first program through Senate Bill 94, which is the Topmost Project. It's a manhood development program for male youth between the ages of 11 and 17. It's a youth crime intervention program. And also we provide intensive mentoring. Our mentors are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're professionally trained and they're also paid, they're salaried. And we also we also provide experiential life skill training, anger management, alternatives to violence, critical thinking skills, self-esteem building, cultural competence are some of the life skills that we teach. In Colorado Springs, there's a vast need for cultural competent programs. We started First People's Institute about 4 years ago, and we have conducted African history and cultural study groups every first and third Saturday. They're from 12 noon till 2 p.m. And the purpose of that is to fill the gap and the void in the knowledge that people have about people of African descent. We teach our history to preschoolers all the way up through senior citizens. We also take our participants on field trips. We do book studies, we do reviews, we review videos. We have a lot of different media that we use to help people to understand, to respect, and appreciate African history and culture. We believe that in this country, there's a lot of distorted information about people of African descent. And one way to resolve the ignorance is with knowledge and information. So that's what we do. This is our contribution to this community. Our program is free of charge. We claim our African history and culture. So the connection is one of history, of culture, of blood, very much as we would equate Caucasian Americans. They can trace their ancestry back to Europe. We trace ours back to Africa. And we look to Africa for inspiration and as well as for spirituality, because it's our belief that spirituality began in Africa. And we do know that all of the major religions started in Africa. The continent was actually colonized by people of European descent, and they imposed their cultural values upon Africans in various ways, and also their economic systems. Africans in America, on the other hand, were subjected to slavery and brought to this hemisphere. And once again, we were subjected to the imposition of alien cultural values and economic systems. So there's a lot of similarities in terms of African Americans and Africans in terms of what we're struggling with. One of the biggest issues deal with cultural violence. We do know that wherever some European Americans have they went there not only as missionaries in terms of spreading the Christian belief. I'm a Christian myself, but what the missionaries also did was to impose their cultural values, their European cultural values, as well as their own particular economic systems. And that, I believe, would best describe cultural violence. When we find people in Africa having espoused a British government system, and then having all sorts of conflicts because those particular political systems are not congruent with the way in which Africans may have governed themselves prior to the Europeans coming. So we do know that the European political system tends to be very adversarial rather than making decisions by consensus. It's very, very adversarial. And I do think that in Africa, prior to the times of it becoming colonized, decisions were made primarily by consensus by those elders of the community, those chiefs, versus what's going on now. We do know that slavery in some form have existed throughout history of humankind. In ancient times, slaves were just simply prisoners of war, and they could eventually earn their freedom and earn various rights by those who may have conquered them. However, Western slavery, which is what happened when Africans were enslaved and brought to the Americas and to other places around the world, was something very unique because it was the first time in human history that slaves had absolutely no rights. They were not even considered to be human beings. In fact, there were people from the religious sector who felt that slaves had no soul. So therefore, you could treat them as property as you could cattle and anything else and do anything you wanted to them because they really weren't human anyway. In fact, the U.S. Constitution states even to this day that Africans or African Americans are only 3/5 of a human being. And we were used back in the early days of America as a count, but not as a full count as a human being. Slavery in the Americas has really been devastating because people were raped and murdered, mutilated in such an inhumane way, if there's a humane way to do those sorts of things. It was unprecedented in human history, and it lasted for several hundreds of years, and we're still dealing with the residuals of slavery in this country. One of the most devastating things about slavery, I believe, besides the devastation of the human spirit, it was a devastation not only for the enslaver, but definitely for the enslaved. Let's say that the physical enslavement of people ended by amendment of the U.S. Constitution several years ago. And that was something which former President Abraham Lincoln is credited with doing. However, what we have now is mental slavery, whereas people are pretty much conditioned to accept value systems which may not be congruent with their own cultural beliefs. For example, my study of history goes back to about 1966. I've studied history a lot longer than I've studied psychology. And one thing that history has taught me is that when we look at what has happened in America, it was not only the physical enslavement of Africans, which was devastating, but certainly all of the residual effects since the ending of slavery. For example, we can talk about white supremacy. To be polite, we can call it racism. But really what it involves is imposing one's cultural views, one's economic system, and even creating second- and third-class citizens for the sake of not providing the same privilege, the same opportunity that people who have ruled this country has had. And what I mean there is that the purpose for slavery was economic. A lot of people benefited from slavery. The slaves did not benefit. There was full employment for the slaves, but they did not reap any of the benefits. Since that time, white supremacy, or to be polite once again, to call it racism, has persisted to limit the amount of privilege and protection that people of color and women have had under the U.S. Constitution. As an American, I feel it is my birthright to be treated fairly, and certainly the yardstick of the U.S. Constitution should be that measure by which all people can be considered for equal treatment. However, there has not been equal protection under the law for all Americans. In fact, you are probably aware that it was only this century that women were able to get the right to vote, and Native Americans even after that. First of all, I believe that it's important as an introduction for an apology to take place for the devastation which was placed upon Africans and people of African descent. I think it's a good move in the right direction. However, if any true healing is going to take place, it will be necessary for all forms of oppression to stop. We have a real problem in this country with some people embracing the idea of equal pay for equal work in regards to females in a male-dominated country. We do know that it's necessary for people to talk about the history and to really begin the healing process. But it's real hard to heal if one is continuously being insulted culturally, or your integrity is being insulted as a human being. I think that if we're going to resolve racism in America, it's going to be an educational process for one, which means we need to have a true multicultural curriculum in every school district across the country, certainly in our own community. That's one step. The churches have to be more involved with helping to illuminate the issue of racism and how it continues to be a devastating disease upon which America is suffering from. I do think that individuals have a responsibility to teach.
And I'm wearing a king's outfit today. As you can see, it's gold trimmings and it's handmade with my beautiful style. And it's from Nigeria. And I am a king today.